Get ready to face one of the most shocking declarations from Pope Francis. With the words, "We are followers of Jesus Christ, and his life, humanly speaking, ended in failure, the failure of the cross." The Pope stunned the world by revealing that Jesus' death is not what we have been told. This statement has shaken the very foundations of Christian faith, causing even the most devout believers to question what they have long believed. In recent sermons, Pope Francis has been discussing the true nature of Jesus' death. And trust me, it's not the story we've been taught. What led to this earth-shattering revelation, and why has the Church chosen now to reveal it? In this video, we address this recent revelation and what the Pope has to share with the whole world. Pope Francis addressed people on Easter to share his feelings and opinions on specific topics. As you know, Easter Sunday is a special day for Christians because they believe it's when Jesus came back to life after dying on the cross. While addressing them, Pope Francis talked about how God is always with us, but he also said some surprising things about Jesus. It's hardly surprising that this wasn't his first time saying something that didn't go over well with the people. He is well known for saying things that make traditional Catholics uncomfortable, but this time, even his admirers, Orthodox Catholics, and opponents were surprised by what he said. He courageously revealed details about Jesus' death that no one knew or had heard before. It caused many people to doubt their long-held beliefs about Jesus. Before we get into all of that, first, we need to look at how Pope Francis leads the Catholic Church, and I must tell you that he leads it in a very unusual way. From growing up in Buenos Aires to becoming a world-renowned priest, Pope Francis was known for his simple way of life and care for the poor and marginalized. Instead of living in the fancy apostolic palace like previous popes, Pope Francis chose to live in the much simpler Vatican guest house. He also dressed very modestly, showing that he didn't want a lot of wealth and luxury. During his time as Pope, Pope Francis talked about important values like kindness, including everyone, and protecting the environment. He believed that the Church should welcome everyone, no matter where they come from or what their situation is. Pope Francis even attempted to communicate with individuals of various religions, not simply Catholics, in order to improve mutual understanding. Pope Francis's acceptance of everyone proved controversial to some more traditional Catholics, who believe that religion is only for specific people. Pope Francis worked hard to maintain the Church's core principles while simultaneously making modifications to better suit the current world. He was deeply committed to assisting those in need and advocating for them. Pope Francis has stated that some of the happiest individuals are those who do not have much. But his new ways of looking at things also caused some arguments about whether the Church should stick to its old beliefs or change to fit in with the world today. Although many have welcomed Pope Francis's efforts to bring fresh perspectives to the Catholic Church, not everyone has embraced his new interpretations of the Bible and Jesus. Those firmly rooted in traditional Catholic beliefs have resisted these changes, but it seems that some of the initial tensions have eased following his latest remarks about Jesus. Before delving into the teachings that have helped calm the waters within the Church, it's important to understand the controversy surrounding Pope Francis's approach to leadership. Balancing the preservation of core Catholic doctrines while adapting ancient teachings to resonate with modern life has been one of his greatest challenges. Rather than simply adhering to the literal text, Pope Francis encourages Catholics to explore the deeper meanings within the Bible's stories. He believes these narratives offer profound lessons for our lives today. Take, for instance, the creation story from Genesis. In the beginning, there was darkness, and then there was light. Pope Francis sees this not merely as an account of creation, but as a metaphor that highlights our unique relationship with God and our duty to protect the earth. This interpretation gives biblical teachings a renewed significance in the context of today's world. Yet, not everyone agrees with this approach. Some conservatives argue that the Bible should be interpreted exactly as it is written, without searching for hidden meanings. They fear that probing deeper into biblical stories could alter the fundamental beliefs of the Church. However, Pope Francis's supporters believe that understanding these deeper meanings enriches the Bible's teachings, making them even more relevant and impactful in the modern era. Before we proceed, you need to know some of the Pope's most controversial interpretations of the Bible. Some of them will shock you. What are the Pope's most controversial teachings that have actually divided the Catholic Church? The Pope is known for saying things that make people talk. Some of his statements are quite all right in the Christian faith, but some cause big discussions and make people question his faith and, weirdly, whether he'll go to heaven. Recently, the Pope said something specifically for LGBTQ Catholics. It's the first time there's been any talk about blessing same-sex couples. Catholic priests can now bless same-sex couples. Pope Francis formally changed Vatican policy today, which, knowing the common religious aversion to the topic, is a huge deal. Some people even want to remove him from being the Pope because of this. To understand why, let's look at some of the things he said. Some years ago, there were reports that Pope Francis said something strange. He reportedly said that humans could disappear and God would make new species. This came from an interview in an Italian newspaper with a friend of the Pope, Eugenio Scalfari, who is an atheist. In another interview, Scalfari reminded the Pope about this and asked about what happens to bad people who go to hell. He wondered if their souls would suffer forever. In response, Pope Francis reportedly said that people who feel sorry for what they did and ask God for forgiveness won't be punished. Instead, they'll be forgiven and can be with God. But those who don't feel sorry and can't be forgiven will stop existing. According to the Pope, he doesn't believe in hell. Instead, he thinks that souls who do bad things just disappear. After this interview, the Vatican quickly said that what Scalfari wrote wasn't exactly what the Pope said. They said the words weren't written down right, so we shouldn't consider them exactly what the Pope thinks. Even though the Vatican said this, there was still some arguing about the interview. First, they put it in their newspaper and website, then took it off and then put it back again before finally taking it off for good. This, of course, caused a lot of confusion. Some people connected what Scalfari wrote to something the Pope wrote in a book called Amoris Laetitia. In that book, the Pope said nobody should be punished forever, because that's not what the Bible says. This made some people think that maybe the Pope has different ideas about hell. In another interview in 2015, Pope Francis seemed to say that even though nobody goes to hell forever, people who don't want to be with God might just stop existing after they die. So even though the Vatican said Scalfari got it wrong, there's still some confusion about what the Pope really thinks about hell. That's not all. Pope Francis has also said things that seem different from what the Church has always taught about the world's top problems. In 2013, Pope Francis did another interview where he said that the biggest issues in the world right now are young people not having jobs and older people feeling lonely. You wouldn't expect the Pope to say, these are the most severe problems. Then, he reportedly said that trying to make people become Catholics doesn't make sense and is silly. This goes against what the Bible says about telling everyone about Jesus. Even more surprising, the Pope allegedly said that there is no particular Catholic God, only God. This seems to go against the idea that Catholicism is the only true religion. Many Catholics were confused and upset by what the Pope reportedly said. Maybe the Pope didn't fully believe in some of the major parts of Catholicism. Some people thought perhaps he has a different, more general view of spirituality that isn't strictly Catholic, and if that's true, not many will be surprised. Continuing with his beliefs, the Pope received more criticism in 2016. Now remember, he always says that abortion is very wrong, but his focus on being kind and forgiving has caused arguments. In 2016, during the Special Mercy Year, the Pope said that priests could forgive women who had abortions, making another dent in his progressive image. The Pope went off script in his weekly address to the faithful gathered on St. Peter's Square to deliver his strongest criticism yet of abortion. Some people liked this idea, but others didn't. Now, Let's discuss what the Pope thinks about money and how the world works. He didn't hold back when talking about capitalism. He said it's not suitable for poor people. He even said caring too much about money, cars, and phones takes people away from God. He said the world needs to be more fair for everyone, with rich and poor people having more equal lives. These words made people who care about fairness very happy, but some said the Pope was talking too much about socialist ideas. One of his most surprising moves was when he said that he was totally against the death penalty. In 2018, Pope Francis said that the death penalty is always wrong, no matter what. This was a major change for the Catholic Church, which before said it was okay in some situations. But not everyone liked what the Pope said. Many people, both inside and outside the Church, criticized him for it. Some high-ranking Catholic scholars were really unhappy with him. They thought he was going against important Catholic beliefs, so they, along with some priests, wrote a letter saying that the Pope was going against the Church's teachings. This letter was published on April 30th on the website LifeSite News. In the letter, they said that Pope Francis was preaching differently from Catholic teachings about marriage, sex, and forgiveness. They said this was the third time they had to talk about this. First, in 2016, they wrote a letter to top Catholic leaders saying that the Pope was teaching the wrong things. Then, in 2017, they said the Pope was teaching 7 things that were against Catholic beliefs, but they didn't call it heresy. But in 2018, they said that what the Pope was teaching was definitely heresy. That's not even the half of it. They further stated that the Pope did not feel guilty for his conduct. The letter stated that the bishops should declare the Pope guilty of heresy and punish him. They advocated for his removal as the Catholic Church's leader. This letter was signed by 19 prominent Catholics, including Aidan Nichols, the founder of the Dominican Order, law professor Brian McCall, and researcher Anna Silvas. Within 12 hours, more than 1,400 people had signed an internet petition in favor of the letter's statements regarding the Pope. The letter pointed to things the Pope said and did that go against what the Catholic Church teaches. They also talked about the Pope saying that divorced and remarried Catholics can take communion, even though the Catholic Church says marriage should last forever. The letter said the Pope was changing important Catholic beliefs about right and wrong. They said he was making people think that what's right and wrong depends on each person, instead of having clear rules from the Church. The supporters of the letters didn't just do this for their own sake, it got more serious. What do recent supporters of the letter now have to say? Supporters of the letter said they were bravely defending the common Catholic beliefs from changes by Pope Francis that they think are wrong and could confuse people. But critics said it was unfair to attack the Pope's authority. But here's the thing. Pope Francis's ideas aren't new. They're part of a bigger revolution in the Catholic Church that started after the Second Vatican Council in the 1960s. During this time, the Church began looking at the Bible in new ways. They used history and culture to understand what the Bible really means. This way of looking at the Bible has led to different, more detailed ideas about what it teaches. But this change has caused a big argument. Even now, some people, called conservatives, are still claiming Pope Francis is changing the Catholic Church's beliefs to fit in with what people think now. They didn't like it when, in 2019, there was talk about letting married men become priests in some places. They also didn't like it when Catholic priests were allowed to bless same-sex couples. This argument is really about whether the Church's beliefs should always stay the same, or if they can change as the world changes. Traditionalists, who want to keep things the same, say that Pope Francis is making the Church's beliefs less important by changing them. But Pope Francis's supporters say that the Church's beliefs can change to fit in with what's happening now. They say that this makes the Church's beliefs more meaningful for people today. They think that by changing, the Church can still be a guide for people, even as the world changes. How the Pope looks at the Bible challenges Catholics to live out the essential beliefs of their faith. He says that we should follow Jesus' example of loving everyone and treating them with respect. He wants us to understand the Bible in a way that makes us want to be better people. His teachings tell us to balance following old traditions and living in the modern world. He wants our faith to be something we practice every day, not just something we believe. Even though some people didn't like what the Pope said before, his recent ideas about Jesus surprised everyone, even his critics. So, what did the Pope say about Jesus that was so surprising? He didn't just talk about new ways to understand the Bible. He also said we should act with kindness and love, just like Jesus did. He says that Jesus cared a lot about poor and struggling people, and that we should too. During that time, Jesus wasn't some distant figure. He was deeply connected to the struggles of ordinary people. He experienced firsthand the oppression and unfairness under the brutal Roman occupation. He used this perspective to urge Christians to follow his example by reaching out to help and understand those around them, especially those less fortunate. We can see practical examples of this in the shocking revelations made by Pope Francis about the true nature of Jesus Christ on two very noticeable occasions. The first eye-opening moment happened when the Pope visited a correctional center. Despite just recovering, he went straight to presiding over Mass and washing the feet of 12 young inmates from various backgrounds, nationalities, races, and faiths, including Islam, and even 2 women. As he performed this powerful foot-washing ritual, Pope Francis gave a significant sermon. This was the setting for Pope Francis to preside over the Mass of the Lord's Supper on Holy Thursday. The Pope reflected on Jesus washing the feet of his disciples and Judas's betrayal, and he stressed that nothing is beyond forgiveness. He began by explaining that foot washing isn't just an old tradition, but a gesture showing how we are to be with one another, caring for each other. But then the Pope took it to another level entirely. He plainly said it's hard to see so much injustice in the world, with people taking advantage of others, people trapped with no way out, and many broken families. Pope Francis said that if anyone has avoided such hardship, it's not because they're better, but because of God's grace. Here's where it gets more interesting, though. Looking those inmates in the eye, the Pope stated that everyone can slip, each one of us, and this awareness that we can all slip gives us the dignity of being sinners, and Jesus wants us that way. That's why he tried to wash our feet to save and serve us. The Pope backed this up by quoting Jesus, saying that if we listened to his lessons, life would be wonderful because we'd rush to help each other instead of taking advantage like the unwise teacher. Pope Francis preached that helping others and lending a hand comes from a noble heart, and Jesus today wants to teach us this nobility of heart. But he went even further, getting extremely personal and relatable. He said we might think if the Pope knew our inner flaws, but Jesus literally knows everything already and loves us as we are. Then he said something even more kind. He said that Jesus is never frightened by our weaknesses. He already paid for our sins. He only wants to accompany us, to take our hand, so life will not be so hard. Basically, the Pope is saying that Jesus isn't shocked by our failures and doesn't judge us. He simply wants to walk beside us, ease our burdens, and love us unconditionally in our imperfect state. Whether religious or not, you must admit these are some of the most uplifting, inclusive teachings about embracing our shared flaws while striving for goodness. Pope Francis enjoys preaching the dignity of our imperfections and Jesus' boundless love for us all exactly as we are. Those were the most shocking truths that'll last for ages to come. No wonder jaws were left on the floor after the Holy Father dropped such wisdom. As if that wasn't enough, during a recent Mass at the famous St. Peter's Square, Pope Francis just doubled down on his shocking revelations about the true spirit of Christianity and how we need to view one another. Speaking to the massive crowd, the Pope preached that Christians must pray for the ability to look at others with the same boundless mercy and caring that Jesus looks at every single one of us. Not mincing words, he plainly stated that no one is perfect. We all sin and make mistakes. If the Lord judged solely on our weaknesses, nobody could be saved. Expounding on that, he referenced the Gospel of John, showing how God did not send his Son to condemn the world, so it might be saved through him. In that light, we must see each other with compassion and understanding, just as Jesus sees us. He said something worth thinking about. When Jesus met people in the Gospels, he saw their authentic selves, the good, the bad, and the ugly, as he put it. There were no secrets before him. He could read their hearts. But here's the main point. Jesus wasn't looking to shame or cast harsh judgment. The Pope said Jesus saw the whole person, not to point fingers, but to embrace our lives, free us from sin, and save us. Pope Francis stressed that Jesus has no interest in putting us on trial or condemning us. Instead, he wants none of us to be lost. The Pope then described the Lord's view of us as the gentle glimmer of a lamp that allows us to see the good in ourselves while still recognizing our flaws and mistakes so we can grow with his grace. As Jesus hangs on the cross, darkness covers the land and he cries out, my God, why have you forsaken me?" This moment of despair echoes the anguish of humanity and underscores the profound sacrifice Jesus is making for the salvation of all people. After several hours on the cross, Jesus breathes his last breath and dies. His death is accompanied by miraculous signs, including an earthquake and the tearing of the temple curtain, symbolizing the breaking down of barriers between humanity and the divine. Jesus' body is taken down from the cross and placed in a tomb donated by a wealthy follower, Joseph of Arimathea. The tomb is sealed with a large stone, and guards are posted to prevent tampering. 3 days later, on Easter Sunday, Jesus triumphantly rose from the dead, fulfilling his prophecies and declaring his victory over sin and death. This miraculous event, known as the resurrection, is the cornerstone of Christian faith, offering believers a profound hope in the promise of eternal life. This is the narrative that many Christians have embraced for generations. But now, Pope Francis is offering a revelation that could reshape how we view it. Here's the bombshell. Pope Francis has passionately highlighted the deeper significance of Jesus' death, urging us to see beyond the traditional view of mere atonement for sin. To him, Jesus' sacrifice is a divine declaration of love and compassion that transcends old interpretations. Instead of focusing solely on redemption from sin, Pope Francis challenges believers to explore the profound spiritual and moral lessons within Jesus' ultimate act of selflessness. At the heart of his message is the belief that Jesus' death wasn't just about wiping away humanity's sins. It was a powerful expression of God's boundless love for all of humankind. By willingly enduring suffering and death, Jesus exemplified the ultimate expression of love and solidarity with humanity, regardless of individual faults or transgressions. This profound act of sacrifice underscores the importance of compassion, forgiveness, and empathy in human relationships. Furthermore, Pope Francis suggests that Jesus' message extends beyond religious boundaries, emphasizing the universal relevance of his teachings on love and compassion, regardless of one's religious affiliation or background. The fundamental message of Jesus' death resonates with all people who seek to cultivate a more just, compassionate, and inclusive society. In emphasizing the universality of Jesus' message, Pope Francis challenges Christians to move beyond exclusive interpretations of salvation and embrace a broader understanding of God's love for humanity. In contemporary society, Pope Francis argues, there is a pressing need to re-examine the relevance of Jesus' message of love and compassion in the face of widespread social injustices and conflicts. By reflecting on the deeper significance of Jesus' death, believers are called to confront systemic inequalities, discrimination, and violence with a renewed commitment to building a more just and equitable world. At the same time, Pope Francis recognizes the profound challenges of embodying the radical love demonstrated by Jesus' death, in a world increasingly defined by division, conflict, and polarization. The command to love your neighbor as yourself can often feel overwhelming and impractical. Yet, Pope Francis reminds us that it is precisely in these moments of difficulty that the true transformative power of love shines brightest. Through acts of kindness, solidarity, and reconciliation, Christians have the opportunity to reveal the enduring relevance of Jesus' message in today's world. In this way, Pope Francis's reflections on Jesus' death serve as a powerful call to embrace the boundless potential of love and compassion within the Christian faith. But Pope Francis didn't stop there. He got real about how often we fail to extend that same mercy and compassion to others. He openly admitted that we are quick to judge, to condemn, and to speak ill of one another. His challenge to us? To ask the Lord for the grace to see others through His merciful eyes, just as He sees us. For Pope Francis, being a Christian is not merely about attending church. It's about living the gospel daily through acts of kindness, empathy, and service. He believes that faith requires us to take action, to roll up our sleeves and confront injustice, always with an eye towards elevating human dignity. He urges us to remember that the power of the gospel lies not in abstract philosophy, but in its ability to transform lives and society through love in action. God is the infinite source of light, love, and protection, embracing humanity with boundless compassion. He is our unwavering faith, the ultimate salvation in times of hardship and life's storms. God grants us grace, mercy, and guidance, illuminating the path of truth and hope. His love knows no bounds, spreading across every corner, igniting the hearts of mankind. He is the Almighty, the Creator, and the guide for all souls towards eternity, bringing peace and blessings that endure forever. His presence is the beacon of strength, and His wisdom leads us to eternal joy and salvation. God is the Almighty, the Creator of the universe, with boundless power and infinite love. He is the light that shines through every darkness, bringing hope and faith to all living beings. God's love never fades, always present in each person's life, guiding us on the righteous path, no matter how difficult or challenging it may be. He is the unwavering rock in times of trial, the unshakable faith that resides in our hearts. When we place our trust in God, we feel the power of salvation, of His endless mercy. He is not only the Almighty, but also a loving Father who listens and understands our prayers, our pain, and our joys. God grants us firm faith, helping us overcome every trial and hardship in life. Faith in God is the light that guides us, the source of comfort when our hearts are weary. In all circumstances, we know that God walks with us, always granting us love and protection. With this faith, our souls are filled with hope, and we know that with God, nothing is impossible to overcome. What are your thoughts on Pope Francis's perspective on Jesus' death? Do you believe he's onto something, or do you hold a different view? And of all the revelations we've shared, which one surprised you the most? We'd love to hear your insights in the comments below. If you found this video engaging, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and share it with your friends. Be sure to subscribe to our channel for more intriguing content like this.